and welcome back to Dorky DIY. I decided to do an update video on the We Are Memory Keepers mold press. I was getting a lot of creases in my molds like a lot of other people, and so I've been playing around with it, trying to iron out the kinks, so to say. So I'm going to go ahead and first we are going to read some of the tips and tricks they say to use. And this is in the instruction manual that comes along with it. It says to first, the heating time for plastic sheets can vary depending on your environment and air temperature. And I found with my machine that if I started timing it, it really helped out on the molding. I was starting to do it about 2 minutes and 15 seconds to 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and I was getting the best mold just basically right after the plastic started to droop in a full bubble. You'll see that underneath your machine, that you can basically tell as soon as the plastic is fully melted. Like basically the second the plastic is fully melted and you get a good droop, go ahead and do it, because that's going to be your best bet to not have too much material. It also says don't place objects too close together when you're doing multiple objects, and I've tried basically every single configuration of doing multiple objects. You know, I moved them around on the little platform and I still get a lot of wrinkles in it, so I still haven't figured out how to best mold multiple objects on one platform. It also says to remove wrinkles and form plastic into corners, use a shaping tool while vacuum is still running and plastic is still warm. I have tried to use my hands and kind of shape things around the base, but the plastic cools down so fast that you really only have a split second. And so I was finding that I had enough time to do it on one side, but maybe not the other. And it also says that you can use a heat tool as you put the plastic down and the vacuum's still going. You can use a heat tool to heat up the plastic and form it around your object better. I haven't tried that yet. I just think that personally you would need about 4 hands to be able to use a heat gun, not burn yourself, and you know, form the plastic fast enough to be able to get a good mold. So I don't know, I might try that, but I don't think I personally have enough hands. And then also it talks about putting clay around things that have undercuts, so that you don't have a gap. And you know, like using the post-it notes, it had a 90-degree angle which ended up molding really well. And the thing that I found worked the best, the tip that I think helped out with a lot of these molding issues I was having, is dimes. So you need an extra $1 in dimes to be able to do your best molds. I actually used the dimes underneath a lot of the objects I was molding. The stamp, I put the dimes underneath. The post-it notes, I put the dimes underneath. And basically anything else I was doing that was flat on the bottom, I put dimes underneath it, so that it gave it really good airflow underneath the object. And I really think that helped out a lot, because it talks about air pockets caused by poor airflow around objects can keep plastic from forming tightly around the object, and you should add air holes to ensure plastic forms tightly. And it looks like a dish, and that, you know, it shows them putting holes through the dish because, you know, if something's shaped concave, you have a big part of the bottom that no airflow is going to be able to get to. So I think it's airflow, airflow, airflow. So, you know, you can use dimes like I have, pennies if you don't have dimes or whatever, wire. I think just as much as you can get something raised up off of the bed to create an airflow around the object, I think I was getting really good molds that way. Now, every single mold did not turn out every single time. I do not think there is a way to get every single object you put into this machine to come out perfect. It depends on size, shape, you know, the height of an object, the droop of your plastic. I really think there's a lot of variables in this machine that make it difficult to figure out, you know, if you're going to get a good mold the first time, which it does make it expensive because don't forget each one of these pieces of plastic is over $1. So I think if you're going to use it for like soap or chocolates or fondant, gum paste, wax melts, candles, anything like that where you're filling up the mold, I think that the wrinkles usually don't really matter depending on where they end up in the mold. And you can also redo the mold. I showed in my last video how you put the piece of plastic in there with your messed up mold facing down, so your bubble comes down like this, because if you turn it over it's going to get burnt on the element in the top. So if you turn it over, put it in there, you can remelt this plastic and reuse it. But I was still getting a lot of wrinkles, so I'm going to try again and see if one of these bigger things that I molded can turn out with a perfect mold coming from a messed up mold. So I think a lot of the people that are saying they wanted this to make shaker cards exclusively, I don't know if I would buy this machine for the sole purpose of just making shaker cards, because you're not always going to get a good mold, and it depends on, you know, what shape you want, how detailed it is, and all these variables that you might not necessarily get a good mold each and every time. And I definitely wouldn't be taking the time and effort to make a card and then try to make a bubble for the shaker for it, and then you can't get a good bubble for the shaker, and then you've wasted all of this time making a card. So at the very least, I would probably make a bubble first and then make a card after you get a good mold with your bubble. Also, I have figured out, they say to heat this up for 10 minutes. I've been heating mine up for at least 15 minutes, and it seems to work a little bit better to make sure it's all the way heated up before you get started. I was doing these tiny little bitty things to mold that I got at the Dollar Tree. I think the best thing to do is to use bigger things, taller things, and maybe even a little bit simpler, because I was getting really good molds off of just using a post-it stack, putting foam letters on top of it, or putting stamps on top of it. I was getting a really good mold that way. And then I also molded this keychain that is made out of beads and string, and so I was thinking, you know, well, maybe it has something to do with airflow, since I got a pretty good mold off of this, and that's why I decided to start putting the dimes underneath things. And I really think the dimes help. Does it completely fix the problem? No, it doesn't. You're still going to get some messed up molds. And here in a second, let's go ahead and I'll show you how I molded the post-it notes with the dimes underneath it, and then we're going to mold a really big fish and see if that makes a difference to these tiny little molds I've been doing. So we'll be back in just a second and we will mold the post-it notes and the fish. Okay, while I'm waiting for this to finish heating up, we're gonna do a cheap Dollar Tree post-it note stack, and I've taken some rubber stamps and put those on here. Got a little bubbles, a mermaid, and a starfish. And I picked molds or stamps that would probably be easy to mold because they don't have a lot of detail in them. So we'll go ahead and mold that in just a second. And I'm going to put 4 dimes underneath it on the tray to give it some good airflow. And I'm going to wait until it's about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. It's been heating up and we're almost there. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the vacuum. And we got a really good mold off of that. So let's take it out and see what it looks like. Alright. We don't have any wrinkles at all on that mold. It looks really good. The only part that it didn't really mold down very well is this one edge right here. And it just didn't do it as crisp as the rest of these edges. So I think you kind of really just need to find the sweet spot on molding your objects, on how long it takes to melt the plastic before you push it down on your molding objects. And I also think aeration really helps, and having a taller object with less detail I think is probably the key here. So you know, put something underneath it so it can aerate. Try to find your sweet spot. Mine's about 2 minutes and 15 seconds to 2 minutes and 40 seconds. It's basically as soon as it makes a complete droop, I go ahead and push it down now, because any longer and I've been getting lots of lines, but it still also depends on what you're putting in there. So anything with a lot of detail, I still think you're going to be getting a lot of lines. And I was also asked about these plastic sheets on whether they're food safe, and they are PETG plastic, and they are food safe. So you can put chocolate, gum paste, fondant, whatever you want in there. They are food safe. Okay, so I've got a really big fish in there, and we're going to turn on the vacuum. Alright, let's see what we got here. That ended up pretty good. We still got some wrinkles in it, but I think it's because he's kind of an awkward shape, and I don't quite know if he was tall enough. So let me take it out and see what it looks like. We got a pretty good mold of him. There is a wrinkle here on the tail, one up here, and a couple down here, but it wasn't very tall, so I'm thinking it was because it wasn't tall enough to be molded. It also left behind some ink from a little fish, so beware of cheap Walmart painted things to be putting in your molds. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the molds that I've done trying to figure out how to combat the wrinkle problem. I did this keychain that's made out of beads because I thought the airflow would be really good through it, and this is what we ended up with. It ended up pretty good. There's only one wrinkle on the top here, and I think that's where all the beads were the closest together, and then we've got 2 wrinkles down here at the bottom, and then the tail didn't do very well, probably because the plastic wasn't melted enough. And then the best ones, I did this one right here, and you've got wrinkles at the corners, but if you were going to make chocolates or soap or anything like that, it really wouldn't make a difference in molding something in it. Now if you were going to use this as a shaker card, it would probably make a difference. And this is the stamp I molded. Got a little unicorn on it. And I think it did a pretty good job. It didn't pick up all of the detail, but you can still tell it's a unicorn. So I think it did a pretty good job. The best ones I got are these 2 right here. I didn't get a single wrinkle in the entire mold. And I didn't get a single wrinkle in this mold either. And these were just a pack of Post-it notes, and I put some little foam letters on it for the one that says face. And then for the Halloween one, I just put a couple stamps on here. I had one that said spooky, a little bat, and a little spider, and I just sat them on top of the Post-it notes, and then I molded that. And those ended up really the best. I think the Post-it notes was one of the ways to go. Now, some of the other ones I've redone. I redid the turtle, and I still got a bunch of wrinkles. Not as many wrinkles as before. Here's the first turtle I did in the first video, and it's got a big wrinkle around it. And then here is the second turtle, and we're starting to get less wrinkles. And then I did another turtle, and I didn't get any wrinkles going around, but I did get wrinkles coming off of all of his feet and his head. So if you were going to mold something with this, I think it would work out pretty good for like wax melts or chocolate or anything like that. But again, I don't think this would make a great shaker card. I also wanted to see if I could get a better mold with multiple objects on it. That was my first try, And then I rearranged them and tried again. And we're still getting lots of wrinkles in these. Like I said though, if you wanted to mold something out of them, I think they'd still end up pretty good. But not so much for the shaker card. And then here's the last one. I tried to do just one. I got really good detail on it. You can see the bumps coming up off of it. But I actually think this one did the worst because I got a big wrinkle on the outside and then I got big wrinkles down the sides of it. And these were some of these Harry Potter jelly slugs because I wanted to make some earrings or some jewelry. So I'm going to try to put some resin in these molds and see how that works out. But I don't know if they're just too small or too detailed or what, but we'll see if I can keep playing around with it and see if I can get a good mold of these. Okay everybody, so my final thoughts on this is that you can get a really good mold of certain objects. You know, I don't think everything is going to turn out perfect every single time. So you have to remember that, especially for card makers that might want a really special shape or a really intricate design. I would especially make the bubble before you make the card, just in case it doesn't work out. And if anybody knows any tips or tricks that I haven't figured out yet, let me know in the comments section and I'll try them out and see if it works for me. I think the main thing is you need to use bigger objects than I was trying to mold. And if you're using small things, then you're kind of going to get some creases. And I just don't see any way to avoid that so far. So I think aeration, aeration, aeration. You know, as long as you got a really good airflow around it and you're using bigger objects that don't have as much detail, I think it's going to work out pretty good. I've had some really good success with some of these, especially with the post-it notes and square stamps. I think with the post-it notes, I got the best molds possible with the post-it notes. So I'm thinking wider, taller, less detail, and you get a better mold. So thank you so much for watching, and if there's any other questions, leave it in the comments and I'll try to figure it out. If you have any tips or tricks, leave it in the comments and I'll try it out for myself. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye.